We are now filming this for the second time. I hope it sticks. May was an unbelievable reading month, however, so this was really exciting. It felt like a 5-star ride all the way through. I really enjoyed many books, so we're just going to get right into it. I'm not going to show these books in any particular order, I'm just showing them as they are right here next to me. So the first book we're going to talk about is There by Tommy Orange, and this was absolutely one of my favorite reads of the month. The basic plot is that there's this big powwow that is planned, and there are several people who are on the way to this powwow. So it is multiple POV and kind of multiple timeline, but not many timelines. But it is a lot of people, and it's kind of difficult to keep track of the different POVs. However, at the beginning of the book, there is a list, so you can still kind of keep track. And that's what helped me. After reading a few paragraphs, I always understood where we were at and who we were listening to. And a lot of these, every single person and in this book has a different reason to go to this powwow. Some people are going there to reconnect with culture, with the Native American culture. Some people are going there to reconnect with family. Some people are going there to do something bad. They have criminal intent. So every single person has a different backstory, but they're still like interwoven and connected through in like a broader sense. And that's what makes this story so interesting. The story is not really resolved, so the ending is kind of open, and that is a little unsatisfying, but it's also very devastating, and it is an absolutely devastating book, and the ending is super, super sad. But I think it's a perfect reflection of what Native Americans feel like in the modern day. I've never really talked about this. I'm only every once in a while mention it, but I do have Native American ancestry, and it's very recent. So my father and my grandmother are Native American, and this book made me feel seen in ways that I have not felt seen before, because there are some characters in here who, like me, are white passing, but still just not quite white passing enough. So we do get asked very often, or I get asked very often, where I'm from or what my ethnicity is, because people have a difficult time placing me. And this was just unbelievable, because for the first time I felt like, oh my God, that is exactly how I feel. And I'm also trying to reconnect, trying to rematriate, but with a respectful distance, because it's just very difficult when you live on a different continent. This captured perfectly how urban Indians or modern day natives feel. And if that interests you in any way, this is the book for you. The next book I have over here is Hood Feminism by Mikki Kendall, and I have decided from now on I'm going to stop rating nonfiction and memoirs, because I think that everyone's going to get different things from it, but that doesn't necessarily make the nonfiction bad if you aren't learning from it, because maybe you just knew all the stuff in it. So I'm going to stop rating them in stars. If I would give this a star rating, however, Mikki Kendall speaks in this book about intersectional feminism, and if you are, like me, a white feminist, I absolutely recommend this book. This is a collection of essays on different topics, and I obviously annotated this book to death. I absolutely recommend it. And it really is a good lesson on the things that we need to learn as feminists, the narratives we need to change, and where we need to be more inclusive in different topics. The next book I'm going to talk about, I listened to as an audiobook, so you're only going to see it like this, but because the combination of Hood Feminism with Honey Girl while listening to it was actually perfect. I'm not going to go into too much detail, because in my reading vlog, where I also read The House on the Cerulean Sea, I talk about Honey Girl quite in depth. So if you want to know more about this book, then please check out my reading vlog from a few weeks ago. The first half of Honey Girl wasn't that strong in my opinion. I personally didn't like it as much, but the second half of the book was amazing, especially in combination with Hood Feminism, because it really touches on a lot of subjects, because Hood Feminism had this theory of like what it is to be, what the lived experience of Black women especially are, and then Honey Girl completely reflected that in fiction, in a story, and I just loved that combination of the two. So that was a lot of fun to read the two of them together. The next book I have over here is The Dreamers by Karen Thompson Walker, and this book was so much fun, and also this I just love this cover. I cannot get over this cover. I'm so glad I got it in this edition. What basically happens, I can't say too much. It's pretty much what I said in the TBR. There are college kids that are suddenly falling asleep and not waking up. And they figure out that this is a contagious disease because more and more college kids and more people they were in contact with start falling asleep and they're not waking up. So they're taken to the hospital, and in the hospital they realize that all of these people that are not waking up have extremely vivid dreams. So they have lots of eye movement and their brain activity is extremely high, which indicates that they're having very vivid dreams. And what I liked about this was that it was written in a way where it kind of felt like one complete dream. So the writing in this book is absolutely beautiful, and it feels like a beautiful prose style, and it feels like one long dream. I gave this a 3.5 stars because I thought it was a little slow and it was not very plot heavy, but I loved the motives in it and like the themes about what can our brain potentially do. You know, what are the things that attachments and emotions we can form just by the power of our brain and by power of dreams. And I really liked that theme, and it was really interesting, and I'm also a sucker for dystopian and pandemic books. So if that is your thing, then you'll probably enjoy this book, even though it is quite slow and not very plot heavy, but it is very pandemic moody. And I also think that the author really caught the mood of what it's like to be in quarantine, and I think we can all very much relate to that. So if you enjoy pandemic books, this is up your alley. The next book I have lying next to me here is Me and White Supremacy by Layla Assad. I started reading this book in April, but I really wanted to take my time, so I've just finished it this month. And Me and White Supremacy is basically a workbook. So every single day there is a prompt on something, on some aspect of racism and anti-blackness that we have probably internalized, or about white privilege, white fragility, and so forth. And then at the end of that explanation and chapter and how we see these different themes internalized and how people speak about them, there are journaling prompts to reflect how we have internalized these different aspects of racism. And I absolutely enjoyed this book. I mean, not in a good way, but in a very intellectual, wow, it's really good to think about this way, because it is very heavy, obviously, and that's also why it took me a while to get through this. This is actually a 28-day challenge, but it took me a lot longer because I really wanted to sit down and have the time to think about the journaling prompts, and I just needed a little more time to do that, and I couldn't do it every single day. But it's a very good book. What I really liked about it were the suggestions at the end, and like how to be anti-racist in your everyday life and how to do the work, how to show up. Because I read a lot about racism and how to be anti-racist, but there are so many ways you can actually integrate it into your life and how to be an actively anti-racist. And I am always willing to learn more, and this was very insightful for myself, and I will be gifting this to a lot of people that I know. Next book here is The House on the Cerulean Sea, and this was such a fun read. This was an absolute 5-star from me. I really enjoyed this, and if you are interested in the details of this and what I thought of this, then please check out the reading vlog that I just mentioned before, because in that reading vlog I read this book and I listen to Honey Girl, and I talk about this book in detail in there already, so I'm not going to talk about it now. I gave this a 5-star rating. It is so much fun. It's like a big heartwarming hug, and if you feel like reading something uplifting because you've read too many serious things as of late, then this is the book for you. It's a light read. It is so much fun. It's heartwarming and emotional and all of those good things that we need. If you want to know more, then check out my reading vlog. It is spoiler free. This month I also read What Comes After by Joanne Tompkins, and this book I really enjoyed. I gave this book a 3 stars. Yes, I gave this book a 3 stars because I thought it was just a tidbit too long. So what is this book about? In the very first chapter, so I'm not giving too much away, a teenager goes missing. His name is Daniel, and Daniel goes missing. A week after he goes missing, Jonah, his longtime childhood friend and neighbor, takes his life and explains in his suicide note that he kills Daniel, and he explains where his corpse is, and that corpse is found, so obviously Jonah did kill Daniel. They're both young teens, and about the same time of the death, there is a pregnant girl, that shows up at Daniel's house and starts living with his dad. So we can kind of assume what might have happened there. This book is not a very plot-heavy book. This is a very, very character-driven book, and it was kind of marketed as a mystery, but I would not put it in that category because plot-wise, there's not much that's happening. Most of it is guessable. It's really about the characters and their resilience to trauma. I also read up on Joanne Tompkins, and as far as I understood, she worked at a court and helped victims and people in big court cases like rehabilitate from the crimes that were committed and rehabilitate from court cases. And I think in that work, she's probably seen a lot of people and how resilient people can be and how they can work through trauma. And that's what is reflected in this book. So it's very, very character driven, and the characters are very well portrayed. And it really is about their resilience and growth after this trauma and how they go forth in life after all of the things that have happened. And that was done extremely well. However, I think the book was about 100 pages too long. It was just a tidbit too long, in my opinion. There were some parts where it just felt like it was kind of dragging on. Some people might understand the characters better than I do, so for some people this might be a 4 or 5 star read even. But it was still an enjoyable read, a good book, and a good pick for book for the month. The book that I have over here next, I read this in 2 days, even though it is 400 pages, is The Woman in the Window by A.J. Finn. I didn't know that the next Netflix movie of this book actually came out this month too. I did not know. And I read this book before I saw that the movie came out, and I really enjoyed this. It was just fun. I gave this a 4 star. It's a crime read. It's a thriller. We have an unreliable narrator, so it's just a lot of fun, and you try to figure out everything what's happened. I didn't really see the plot twist coming. 2 of the twists in the book I did not see coming, even though I kind of could have guessed them. But it's a read that you do not want to put down. But basically, what happens is we have a woman in the window. We have a person who is scared of leaving the house, and she witnesses a murder in her neighboring home and calls the police. However, this woman is quite a bit of an unreliable narrator, which is why we're never sure, did the murder really happen, or was she just seeing things? What's going on? And it's a really interesting story to see unfold, and I don't know, I absolutely enjoyed it. It was just so much fun to read this, and I think I'm going to try and read more crime, mystery, thriller type books because it was just a lot of fun. There are 2 other books, and I lent both of the copies to my mom because I thought she would probably enjoy them, so I don't have them here. And the first of those is Hunter Biden's Beautiful Things. It is his memoir that he wrote. And like I said, I'm not going to rate memoirs anymore because I don't think it's right to rate other people's lives. I guess I just didn't want to do that anymore going forward. Didn't feel right. Beautiful Things is about Hunter Biden and his family. He talks briefly about his childhood and what that was like, losing his mother and his sister at a very early age. But he also talks a lot about losing his brother recently and how that affected him and all of the substance abuse issues that he has had before that and since then. This was a very interesting read. I did think it was super interesting. Didn't necessarily resonate with his writing styles. I've read other memoirs where I've just enjoyed the writing a lot more, and I didn't enjoy this as much, but it was still very interesting, and man, do I have respect for Joe Biden. I cannot believe what that man must have gone through, what his family has gone through, and the resilience they must have developed, especially considering all of the things that have happened with their family. Absolute respect. And I think I have more respect for him now after reading this book. So it's definitely an interesting memoir. If you are interested in the Biden family, then this is definitely a book for you, and that's why I gave it to my mom. The last book I'm going to talk about is The 7 Husbands of Evelyn Hugo, and that was an absolute favorite. Oh my god, I enjoyed this book so much, and that's why I also immediately gave it to my mom. The 7 Husbands of Evelyn Hugo is about Evelyn Hugo, who is a big famous movie star that was popular around the 50s. That's when she started being very popular. But we are in modern times, and she's being interviewed by someone from a magazine, and in the course of that interview, she explains basically why she married all of her 7 husbands and what they meant to her, and her life story unfolds through that. I did not expect this book to have as much bi representation as it actually did because Evelyn Hugo is bi. There was a plot twist in it that I did not see coming. Oh my gosh. But even so, this was such an emotional book. It was full of everything that you want in a book. It was super interesting. It was written well. It had love in it. It had betrayal. The people in the book weren't perfect, and I really like it when we have kind of realistic characters, but it's also fun to read because it's about Hollywood and movie stars and all these things. Oh my god, it was such a fun read, and the plot twist blew my mind. Absolutely blew my mind. So I really enjoyed this book. I can't really say much more about it just because I'm scared to reveal more about the story, so I'm not going to say much more than that. But I sobbed for the last 50 pages. Really, I was sobbing, and I wanted to film that day, and I was so angry because my eyes were so puffy afterwards. But that is how much I enjoyed that story. I'm still reading The Book Thief, so while I'm filming this is the 28th of May, so it's not yet the end of May, and I'm not sure if I'm going to finish The Book Thief, but I had time to film today, so I wanted to make sure that I have all of my books ready for the end of the month. I just filmed now because The Book Thief, I've given it 5 stars before. It is one of my most favorite books, and it's a reread, so maybe I'll mention it in my June wrap-up. Those are the books that I read in the month of May. There were so many really great books in that month. I mean, seriously, I got so lucky with all of the reads. I enjoyed so many of them. And if you've read any of the books, let me know in the comments of what your thoughts are on them. If you plan on reading any of them, I'm always interested to talk about that in the comments. Thank you for being here today, and I'll see you in the next video.